To get involved in this activity, be sure you have these slides open as well as these documents posted on Google Classroom, the ones with the Do Now images, the documents you'll be reading later today, as well as a copy of the handout just in case you need that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So the Cold War, as you may have noticed from the Do Now images, was a stark contrast from what we have seen in World War II. So during World War II, Russians were seen as allies of the United States because they were fighting on the same side against Nazi Germany, but then shortly afterwards, Russia quickly became an enemy. So the question is, well, why? Why would Russia / the Soviet Union be so, like, the perspective on them changed so quickly and so rapidly? The answer lies in the ideological origins of the Cold War, which is that the Soviet Union promoted and spread communism, whereas Western Europe and the United States promoted and supported capitalism. So one of the key questions for us is who was most responsible for the Cold War? Go ahead and pause this video at questions or slides like this and go and turn and talk with your shoulder partner real quick about these images and whether or not you think or the US or the Soviet Union was more responsible. So go ahead and pause and then come back when you're ready. So in this image, we see the United States had much more ICBMs than the Soviet Union in 1966. ICBMs are intercontinental ballistic missiles that can have the capacity to carry atomic weapons. So as we know, the United States developed the first atomic weapon and used it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan during the end of World War II. And so the Soviet Union may have seen this as a sign of a threat, and they were the ones to then build up their nuclear missiles capacity. And so you could say that the United States started it by having more ICBMs and higher levels of nuclear armaments that were threatening the world. Because, I mean, if you think about it, like if your next door neighbor has a stockpile of weapons, but they keep saying like, oh no, it's for defense, but they keep building up their stockpile of weapons, you might get a little bit suspicious of them. On the other hand, as we know, the bear right here represents the Soviet Union, as we can see from the hat as well. And as we know, Berlin after World War II was supposed to be divided amongst the Allied powers, the main Allied powers. That was the French, the English / British, and the Americans and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union then closed off Berlin from the rest of Germany and didn't really allow anyone to come back and forth. And so this led to an increase in hostilities and a low-key crisis. And so you could also say the Soviet Union was responsible. We see during this time period that Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister from Great Britain, coins this term that the Soviets established an Iron Curtain, this division between capitalist and communist countries. The Soviet Union spread communism to these border countries right here and forced these countries to become communist. So that's the argument that they established this like a wall, sometimes literally as they did in Berlin, but also figuratively, the ideological wall between communism and capitalism. However, we also know that this also happened shortly before. Germany did invade the Soviet Union twice in the early 1900s. We know the French also invaded Russia earlier as well. And so the Soviets may have just been protecting themselves from the possibility of further invasion by building up allies on the left-hand side where they were closest to Europe. So go ahead and decide for yourself and take down some notes based off of what you just heard. Who started the Cold War based off of